Keanu stood slowly and did something that made Jordan's eyes go wide. Keanu Reeves, known not just for his roles on screen but for his humility and quiet generosity, had a rare afternoon off. Dressed in his signature understated style, black jeans, a plain t-shirt, and a ball cap pulled low, he stepped into his small McDonald's tucked in a quiet LA neighborhood. No entourage. No cameras. Just a man looking to enjoy a simple meal. The restaurant buzzed with its usual rhythm, the hiss of the fryer, the shuffle of sneakers on linoleum, the distant beeping of orders ready to go. Keanu stood at the counter, politely waiting his turn, when something unusual caught his eye. Just outside the window, near the drive-thru lane, a little boy, no older than 9, was dancing. Not just dancing for fun, but performing. Every move had intention. He spun, jumped, tapped the sidewalk like it was a stage. Beside him sat a cardboard sign, hastily scribbled, "Dancing for Grandma. Need help for her treatment. Every dollar counts." The boy's shirt was 2 sizes too big, and his sneakers had seen better days, but his spirit? That was shining. He danced with everything he had, trying to grab attention from passers-by. Most ignored him. A few smiled sadly. Some dropped loose change into a small plastic cup that trembled with every spin he made. Keanu's burger was ready. He took the tray, but his eyes never left the boy. Something about the scene tugged at him. Maybe it was the boy's determination. Maybe it was the raw honesty of the sign. Maybe it was because, deep down, Keanu knew what it felt like to lose someone and to fight, quietly, for those you love. He sat by the window, his food untouched, watching. And just like that, the first thread of something much bigger had begun to weave its way through the evening. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and like the video so you don't miss tomorrow's video. Keanu couldn't take his eyes off the boy. Each move the child made was filled with urgency, like he wasn't just dancing for money, he was dancing for time. The kind of time people beg for in hospital waiting rooms, praying for one more week, one more day, one more chance. A car slowed near the boy. A woman in the passenger seat rolled down the window, smiled faintly, and dropped $1 in the cup. The boy bowed, then spun again, keeping the rhythm alive even though his feet were clearly tired. His breathing was heavy, his shirt clinging to him with sweat, but he didn't stop. Keanu rose from his seat, burger untouched, and walked outside. As he approached, the boy froze mid-step, surprised by the tall man in black who suddenly stood before him. Keanu knelt down, removing his sunglasses. His voice was soft but steady. "Hey there," he said. "What's your name?" The boy blinked. "Jordan," he replied shyly, shifting his weight. Keanu nodded. "Nice to meet you, Jordan. That was some seriously amazing dancing." "Thanks," Jordan mumbled, his gaze flicking between Keanu's face and the cup at his feet. Keanu looked at the sign again. "Dancing for Grandma. Need help for her treatment." He glanced back at the boy. "Is your grandma sick?" Jordan nodded slowly. "She has something wrong with her lungs. She can't work anymore. We don't have insurance. Mama says the treatment costs more than a car." Keanu's throat tightened, not just because of the story, but because of the way Jordan said it, like it wasn't just something he'd been told, but something he'd learned to accept. A kid, carrying the weight of a world he never asked for. "Does your mom know you're out here?" Keanu asked gently. "She's at the hospital right now," Jordan said, glancing toward the end of the block. "She left me with a neighbor, but I snuck away. Grandma needs help." This wasn't just a performance. This was a child trying to save the person who raised him. No camera crews. No viral stunt. Just raw, real love. Keanu stood slowly and did something that made Jordan's eyes go wide. He reached into his back pocket, pulled out a slim black wallet, and handed Jordan a folded bill. It wasn't $1. It wasn't a 5. It was 100. Jordan stared at it like it was glowing. "Take this," Keanu said, "and let's go talk to someone about helping your grandma. You're not alone in this." Jordan clutched the bill in both hands like it was made of gold. His eyes were wide, unblinking, as if he were afraid it might disappear if he blinked too long. Keanu smiled gently. "Come on," he said. "Let's sit for a minute." They walked back into the McDonald's together, an unusual pair, a world-famous actor and a sweaty little boy with a cardboard sign and a plastic cup. The cashier raised an eyebrow, but Keanu simply nodded politely and guided Jordan to his booth. "Are you hungry?" Keanu asked. Jordan hesitated for half a second. "Yes, sir," he said, quietly. Keanu stood again. "Don't go anywhere," he said with a wink. A few minutes later, he returned with a tray full of food, nuggets, fries, a Big Mac, an apple pie, and a chocolate milkshake. Jordan's eyes lit up like it was Christmas morning. As he took his first bite, Keanu sat across from him, watching carefully. He didn't want to overwhelm the kid, but something inside him had shifted the moment he saw that sign. This wasn't just about doing a good deed. It was about listening to that instinct that always told him, when someone needs help, and you can help, do it. So, Keanu began. Tell me more about your grandma. Jordan chewed slowly, wiping his mouth with a napkin. Her name's Lorraine, he said. She raised me. My dad left when I was a baby. My mom works 2 jobs, and Grandma used to babysit me. She was always there. Always. Keanu nodded. She got sick last year. Real bad. Couldn't breathe right. The doctors say she needs something called immunotherapy. But it costs like thousands. Mama cries at night sometimes. I pretend I'm asleep, but I hear her. The boy paused, looked down at his fries, then added quietly, I just want to help. I don't want Grandma to go away. Keanu's heart clenched. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out his phone, and tapped a few times. Jordan, he said, do you trust me? The boy looked up. Yeah, I think so. Good, Keanu said. Because I know some people, real good people, who can help with your grandma's treatment. And I'm going to take care of it. Jordan's jaw dropped. Like all of it, Keanu said, not for a second hesitating. You don't need to dance in a parking lot to save the person you love. That's not a burden you should carry. Jordan stared at him for a long moment. Then, without saying a word, he slid out of the booth, walked over, and wrapped his arms around Keanu. The boy's voice trembled. Thank you, he whispered. I didn't think anyone would care. Keanu held him gently, whispering back, I care, kid. And you just reminded me why it matters. The ride to the hospital was quiet at first. Jordan sat in the passenger seat of Keanu's black SUV, the cup of donations in his lap, his eyes darting nervously between the window and Keanu. Every now and then, he'd peek at Keanu like he still couldn't believe this was real, that this wasn't some dream where he'd wake up back on the sidewalk with his cardboard sign and aching feet. Keanu glanced over, offering him a soft smile. You holding up okay? Jordan nodded. I've never ridden in a car this nice before. Keanu chuckled. It's just a car. You're the one making the difference here. They pulled up to St. Bernadette's Medical Center, a worn but caring hospital nestled on the east side of the city. Keanu parked, grabbed the notes he'd taken, and led Jordan through the automatic doors. At the reception desk, Keanu stepped up and calmly said, Lorraine Davis. She's a patient here. Her grandson and I are here to see her. The nurse looked up, clearly startled. Wait, Keanu held up a hand, kind but firm. Just here as a friend today. Jordan's fingers gripped the edge of Keanu's jacket. The boy's earlier courage seemed to falter now that they were inside the sterile, humming halls of the hospital. But Keanu knelt beside him. You ready to see her? Jordan nodded. She doesn't know I went out dancing. I didn't want her to worry. Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. She's going to be proud. Trust me. They were led down a long corridor and into a small room lit by the pale glow of late afternoon sun. There, in the hospital bed, hooked up to oxygen and IVs, lay Lorraine Davis, a woman whose silver curls framed a face lined with years of love, strength, and now, fatigue. Her eyes fluttered open at the sound of the door. Jordan, she whispered, smiling weakly. Baby, what are you? She froze as her gaze landed on Keanu Reeves, who stepped softly into the room like he didn't want to disturb a sacred place. Jordan rushed to her side. Grandma, I brought someone who's going to help you. Lorraine's confused look melted into something warmer, gentler. Is this one of your dancing heroes? She asked, her voice teasing but thin. Keanu chuckled. You could say that. Ma'am, I'm Keanu, and your grandson is one brave, incredible human. I know, she said proudly, reaching for Jordan's hand. Keanu cleared his throat, then gently explained who he was, what he'd seen, and what he planned to do. We've already made a few calls. We're covering the rest of your treatment. All of it. You don't have to worry about the bills anymore. Lorraine blinked, stunned. I don't understand. Why would you? Keanu met her gaze. Because your grandson reminded me of the kind of love that deserves everything in return. And because I've been where you are, maybe not in the same way, but I've known loss. I've known fear. And I believe no one should fight that alone. Tears slipped down her cheeks, and for a long moment, no one said anything. Then Jordan whispered, See? I told you someone would help. Keanu turned to him and said the words that would stick with him for the rest of his life. You were the help, Jordan. I'm just following your lead. As Keanu stepped out of Lorraine's hospital room to give her and Jordan a moment alone, he exhaled, deep, full, and heavy. What started as a quiet stop at McDonald's had turned into something far more profound. And he hadn't done it for attention. He'd done it because he could. But fate had a funny way of turning quiet deeds into something louder. Waiting in the hallway was a nurse who'd been passing by when she overheard the last few minutes of their conversation. Her eyes welled with tears, and she spoke in a soft, odd voice. Were you really Keanu Reeves? He nodded politely. I am. And you just paid for her treatment? She's family to that little boy, Keanu said. That's enough for me. The nurse swallowed hard and whispered, my cousin, she's in stage 3. Single mom. Been trying to get a spot in the same grant program you just mentioned. She's on the wait list. Keanu took out his phone. Give me her name. I'll make a call. Word spread faster than wildfire. Within 20 minutes, 2 more staff members approached quietly, asking how they could help, not for themselves, but for patients they knew who were struggling. One of them, a janitor named Miguel, handed Keanu a folded $5 bill. Please, he said humbly, for the boy. For his grandma. Keanu didn't take the money. Instead, he knelt down to Miguel's eye level and placed a hand on his shoulder. You already gave something better, your heart. Meanwhile, Jordan sat at his grandmother's side, recounting every moment of his afternoon adventure, the dancing, the burger, the hug, the ride. Lorraine smiled through tears, brushing his curls back from his forehead. You saved me, she said softly. No, Jordan whispered back. He did. Lorraine shook her head gently. He only knew to help, because you showed him why it matters. Back outside the hospital room, a social worker approached Keanu discreetly. I don't want to intrude, but you started something here. Whatever you need, contacts, follow-up, connections, I'll help. Keanu nodded. Let's not let this be a one-time thing. Let's help more families. Quietly, no red carpets. Just people showing up for people. And so they did. That evening, Keanu sat in his car before heading home, looking out at the Amber City skyline. His phone buzzed. A message from Rob. 3 more families helped today because of you. The fund's growing. You lit a match. Keanu stared at the message for a moment, then looked down at his hands, the same hands that had once held scripts and weapons in action films, now holding names of real people who needed real help. This was the kind of story that never made headlines. The next morning, Keanu's phone was buzzing nonstop, not from agents or producers, but from people he hadn't heard from in years. Friends, journalists, old collaborators. Somehow, someone at the hospital had posted a blurry photo on social media. Keanu Reeves in a McDonald's booth beside a young boy holding a Happy Meal and a cardboard sign that read, Dancing for Grandma. It went viral overnight. Hashtag Dancing for Grandma started trending across platforms. People wanted to know, who was the boy? What happened? Why was Keanu there? Keanu didn't respond to any press requests. He wasn't interested in being the center of attention. But something told him, this story wasn't just his anymore. It belonged to Jordan, to Lorraine, to the millions of people out there who were quietly doing everything they could to hold their families together. That same afternoon, Jordan and Lorraine were discharged, thanks to expedited treatment now fully covered. Keanu picked them up himself. No limo, just the same black SUV and a quiet determination. Where are we going? Jordan asked, his voice sleepy but excited. Keanu grinned. Someplace you might like. He took them to a cozy cafe tucked in a quiet corner of LA, a spot with a small stage, wooden floors, and warm lights. A place where, on some nights, artists performed poetry, music, and yes, even dance. Keanu had made a few calls. That night, the cafe would hold a benefit performance called Jordan's Dance. It wasn't a fundraiser. Keanu already had the medical bills covered. No, this was something else. Something deeper. It was about celebration, about resilience, about letting Jordan's courage ripple out into the world. People came, strangers, neighbors, local artists. One woman brought her daughter, who'd been saving her allowance to buy a gift for her own sick grandparent. She handed Jordan an envelope with 7 crumpled $1 bills and a drawing of an angel that said, "To your grandma, from mine." Jordan danced again, this time, not for help, but for joy. He wore the same shoes, the same shirt, but his face was different. It carried the smile of someone who had been seen, heard, loved. And in the back of the room, Keanu watched silently, tears welling in his eyes, not because of what he had done, but because of what Jordan had sparked. A child's act of love had turned a fast food parking lot into a battleground for hope, and won. After the performance, Keanu knelt beside him again. "You're a lot of things, Jordan," he said. "But you're also an artist. That dance, that's your story, and it deserves to be seen." Jordan nodded, his voice small but proud. "I want to keep doing this, but not for money. Just for people." Keanu smiled. "Then we'll make sure the world has a stage for you." The following week, life was beginning to settle down for Jordan and Lorraine. Her health had stabilized, and she was now enrolled in a full outpatient program, paid in full thanks to the anonymous grant Keanu had arranged. Jordan had gone back to school, and though he still kept the now famous cardboard sign in his backpack, it was no longer a symbol of desperation. It had become his reminder to never stop fighting for the people he loved. But Keanu wasn't finished yet. One crisp Friday morning, a sleek van pulled up outside the small apartment complex where Jordan and Lorraine lived. Lorraine stood at the door in her robe, blinking at the unexpected vehicle. Then came the knock. Keanu stood there, holding a cup of coffee and a manila envelope. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said with that signature half-smile. "Keanu," Lorraine exhaled. "You've already done more than we could ever thank you for." He stepped inside. "Actually, I have one more thing." He handed the envelope to Jordan. Inside was a simple letter, typed neatly, with a gold-embossed logo at the top. "Reeves Foundation for the Arts and Wellness. Awarded to Jordan Davis. Full scholarship to the LA Youth Performing Arts Program. Private dance lessons plus health and wellness stipend to the boy who danced for love and taught us all what it means to care." Jordan stared at the letter. His fingers trembled. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Keanu said. "You just have to promise to keep dancing." Tears welled in Lorraine's eyes again. "Keanu, how can we ever repay you?" He smiled gently. "You already have. You reminded me what it means to be human." And then came the real surprise. Keanu knelt in front of Lorraine and held out a small velvet pouch. Inside it was a simple, elegant bracelet engraved with a single word. "Fighter." "It belonged to my sister," he said softly. "She battled leukemia for years. I kept this with me ever since she passed. I think she'd want you to have it now." Lorraine held the bracelet to her heart, overcome. No one in the room could speak for a moment. Finally, Jordan whispered, "I thought angels only showed up in stories." Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. "Some do, but others show up at McDonald's." By now, the story of the boy who danced for his grandma had become more than a viral moment. It had turned into a global wave of compassion. News anchors spoke about it in warm tones, calling it a beautiful reminder of the power of kindness. Talk shows invited guests to discuss the impact of one child's courage and the man who had stepped in without seeking praise. Keanu, of course, stayed out of the spotlight. No interviews, no red carpets, just quiet, continued support from the shadows. But the story had a life of its own. One day, while Jordan was at the Youth Performing Arts program, his first real dance class, Lorraine sat at home flipping through the channels. A knock came at the door. She opened it expecting a neighbor, maybe a nurse. Instead, it was a woman in a smart gray suit and a warm smile. "Ms. Davis?" she asked. "My name is Tasha Reynolds. I'm with the Better Days Foundation. We specialize in spotlighting stories of resilience in children, and we'd like to feature Jordan." Lorraine blinked. "How did you?" "Keanu told us not to reach out unless we were ready to do it right, with care, privacy, and on your terms." Later that week, a documentary team sat down in their living room. Not a flashy crew, just two people, a camera, and an incredible amount of heart. They captured Jordan's story in his own words. Not edited, not dramatized, just honest. "I didn't think I was doing something special," Jordan told them. "I was just scared to lose my grandma, and I didn't want to wait around and watch her get sicker." When asked about Keanu, he paused for a long time, then said, "He didn't just give us money. He gave us hope. He made me feel seen." The documentary aired weeks later under the title, "A Dance for Lorraine: How a Boy's Love Moved a City," and the world responded. Letters poured in from all over, from New York to Nairobi. Struggling families, doctors, children, retired veterans, people who had felt forgotten until they saw Jordan dance. Donations came flooding into the hospital's family care fund. Over $1. $2 million raised in a week. Not for fame, not for brand deals, but because people remembered what it meant to care. And then, one final message came in. It was handwritten, wrapped in a yellow envelope, no return address, just a simple note. I was going to give up. I was ready to end it all last month. But I saw your story, and I danced instead. Thank you. You saved me. S. Lorraine read the letter out loud to Jordan that night. He didn't say anything. He just looked at the little cardboard sign he kept tucked under his bed and quietly picked it up again. Not to ask for help this time, but to remind himself one small act can save a life.